Okay, so here is my story, my coming out story. Bear with me. I tend to talk with my hands. So, um, it's really tough just looking at the camera and talking, but that's what I'll do. I want to share this with you because I think whether you're 14, 24, 34, 36, 46, coming out can be incredibly traumatic. And one of the topics I want to talk about later in a separate video is knowing when to come out. I think it's all dependent upon yourself. You know when it's right, but more on that later. So more about me. As I mentioned earlier in one of the videos, I am 55 years old, was just 55 last month. Pretty traumatic, more traumatic than I thought it would be, more traumatic than say 40 or 30. But anyway, I was raised in the Northeast and in a fairly diverse kind of population. However, I knew early on I was different, um, not just because there was something that attracted me to other boys, but the fact that I wasn't the athlete. And I remember at an early age, it's pretty traumatic always being the last one picked on the playground for a team, not being really athletic, and yet not being super smart. So you sort of fell in the middle somewhere. And that's kind of where I felt, or fell. And so at an early age, I knew that I was different. But I think it really started when I hit middle school, and the kind of bullying, the kind of tormenting. It's funny today, I still have a trouble waking up in the morning, not necessarily waking up, but starting the day. I have to roll over to my partner and kind of like just get a hug. And I think it goes back to those days. I never really wanted to leave the house to go to school. I enjoyed it once I got there. I love learning and reading and all, but getting there was a bit of a challenge. So in middle school, it wasn't that great, and I tried different things to join in and all, but it was just the playgrounds like before school were just horrible. And there was at that time, now we're talking in the mid 60s and late 60s, I should say, there wasn't the kind of communication that there is today, so I really had no role models. I didn't know what I was going through, other than I kept being attracted to other boys. And I think I remember having my first experience with another boy probably around 13 or 14 in 7th or 8th grade. And I still remember him today, and it's pretty vivid. So it did make an impact. So I'm going to walk you through chronologically my life. And if I ramble, bear with me, if you would. So, 7th or 8th grade, we kind of, I guess, hooked up, as you would say today. And when I went into high school, it kind of changed because I knew I either had to conform to what was the norm and not being gay, because I really didn't at that point I didn't think the strength to be really different. So I was sort of different, and even then, would be in gym class, would dread that, and while it was somewhat fun, it really wasn't. And I think the best day was graduation day for me because I could be free and then get off to college. I knew, again, like I say, I was different, but I was very interested in art, and so I decided to go into the city. And rather than go to a college, because again, you have to understand, I was never really had a lot of self-confidence, or self-esteem, so I needed to get away. I didn't think I could conform, and I was afraid to go to a college. I actually wanted to join the military, go to West Point, but I never thought I could cut it, so I kind of just put it out of my mind. Anyway, I went to the art school in the city, and it was just a wonderful, because it was, even then in the late 70s, it was so diverse, and I met people that accepted me for who I was. It was wonderful to walk into an environment and nobody knew my past, and they could accept me for who I am. And I think that was the first time I really experienced what I thought was true acceptance. So then I knew, again, I knew I was gay. I don't think we called it gay then. And, but I just, at that point, there were really no role models like there are today. And so I didn't really know how to deal with it other than to push it down and say, I've got to move on. And I really didn't have the strength inside of me to be different. And that sometimes today I think, maybe that was good because in those days it was just, if I could have gone down one path, I'm not sure if I'd be here today with the unfortunate AIDS epidemic and all. So I chose to get married and got married at a fairly young age, 23, 24. And I thought I was in love, but I can remember my wedding night thinking, and on the honeymoon thinking, wow, what a mistake I made. And at that point, I just buried myself and built these walls that stood for like almost well over 20 years. And by building these walls, nobody really got to know me. And it was just kind of unfortunate in that respect because I never let my family really get to know me. I never let, close friends in. And I look back now and I'm like, where did the time go? But again, it was the late 70s and there wasn't the internet, there wasn't Twitter, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't, MySpace, YouTube. So I really had no kind of role models to do it. So I just put everything inside of me and life went on. The great news is I had two wonderful children, a boy and a girl, who are incredibly wonderful kids. They are very much a part of my life. They respect me, they love me, and they love my partner. So on that respect, it does get better. If you're watching this and you're wondering, how do you tell your family and all? And I think 2001, part of the recession, for those of you who may remember, and I was in the company for like 20 years and lost my job, which is pretty traumatic because, again, through burying myself, my job had become my life, and I wouldn't let, people around me know who I was. A few months later, my then wife asked for a divorce, and at that point, she still didn't know that I was gay, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise, and so it was a fairly amicable divorce, but it cost me a lot of money, but the price of freedom, can't imagine. So I then was free and was able to really be me. And so this is now around, I was 44, 45, and I met this wonderful group of people who really supported me coming out. My first coming out experience was with one of my very, very best friends, Jane, who we were at a restaurant, and she was actually coming out to me. And we had worked together for like 20 years at that company, and she was coming out to me. And so after the restaurant, or after dinner, during dinner, she came out to me, and we went for a little walk around this park. And it was like, I could feel it in my throat. I had to tell somebody. Up until then, I had told no one. And I remember, I can still feel how it felt. And we were just walking through this park. It was, early evening. And I said, I've got to tell you something. I said, I'm just like you. And I remember we hugged, and it was just so wonderful. It was like 20,000 gazillion pounds had been taken off me. And there was somebody who knew me and loved me and accepted me. And it was an incredible feeling. And she introduced me to a wonderful group of people who helped me the first year coming out, and who now I want to kind of pay it forward. It's about time that I do. And so that's why I'm offering this up. But back to my story. So we came out to each other, and then it was a few months, and they took me to a couple of bars, and I met some guys, and we would hook up, and it was just a wonderful experience because the thing that I hadn't received was affirmation that I was a good person, I was good looking back then, and it was just a wonderful feeling. And it was really strange to be with people that were like me. And I remember walking into the first gay club, and I'm like, oh my God, there's this many gay people here around here. I never knew that. But it was incredible because I felt so comfortable. And so then I remember I met this one guy and we dated for a while. It didn't work out, but I knew that I had to start to tell my family and my friends. And I remember I talked with a number of people I had worked with for years. And I don't recall any one of them. I was really lucky that turned their back on me. They were all just so supportive. They were so glad that I was happy, because they really knew me for who I was. Except I should say they accepted me for who I was after being with me and working with me for such a long time. And I knew then, okay, friends, that's great. Now I got to tell my family. But not only did I have to come out to my parents, I had to come out to my children. And wow, that was tough. And I can remember I said, okay, I'm going to do it to my parents first. And because I really needed their support. And I can remember sitting down. They had come into town. They lived on the other side of the country. They had come into town for my daughter's high school graduation. And we went to the graduation and had dinner. And they came back to the house. They were staying, I was having my house renovated. They were staying in a motel nearby. And I can remember stopping by after dinner. And I was showing them the work that I was doing in the house. And they were sitting in the living room, and I remember bringing in the tray with two bottles. One had a bottle of wine for my mother, and one had a bottle of vodka for my father. And they looked at it and they said, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, I got to talk to you. I want to talk to you. I need to tell you something." And my mom's the type that would, she said, "Oh my God, what's wrong?" I'm like, "No, nothing's wrong. I'm incredibly happy, but I need to share something with you." And it's kind of sweet because I was sitting sort of face to face a few feet from my dad, and he's kind of hard of hearing. So I said, "Dad," I said, "I need to talk to you." I said, "Remember all these times I've been going to Chicago?" I said, "Well, I've been seeing someone." And he's like smiling, "That's great." And I said, "But I need to share with you. I want to talk to you about who I was seeing." And I remember looking out of the corner of my eye to my right and my mother nodding her head. And my father looks at me and he says, "Well, tell us all about her." And I'm like, "Oh God." And I finally said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." And my mother says to me, I remember hearing my mother in the background saying, "I know what you're going to say." And I looked and I said, "Mom, I need to say this to you. Please let me say this." And I said, "Dad, it wasn't another woman. It was a man." And it took him a second. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you happy?" And I said, "Yeah, I've never been this happy or this free." And my mom said, "I always kind of knew something was there." And I could literally, even now talking about it, I feel the walls tumbling down. It's like it was magical. I was very fortunate. But again, I'm 45 and they were in their 70s. But it was like a whole new rebirth. And I know it seems tough now when you're going to do this, especially if you're 14 and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh." But I have more thoughts on that for another video. But anyway, so it was really wonderful because even now it's kind of tough because I could finally be me. And I literally heard walls come down and I could share things with them that I never could before. I was afraid to say I was cooking. I love to cook because I would think, "Oh my God, they think that's something gay." Or "I'd love to do this," or "I'd love to do that," because they would think it's gay or somebody would think it's gay. And I could share things with them. And we have never been closer. I think we are so close. Excuse me. And so I then realized I have to tell my children. And I told my son, who was older, first. And he was like, "No big deal." But he talked to my daughter. And when I did, it took her a few minutes to understand and wonder, "Well, then why were you married for all those years?" And I had to explain, the situation and all. And that there were many times when I wanted to come out, but I knew I didn't want to lose her, especially my son is older. So I knew I needed to, or I felt I needed to, stay in the closet to take care of them. And I was really lucky because the last 2 years of her high school, she got to spend living with me, and the two of us really got to be great friends and confidants. We are still today. So it does get better. It is you know, it was interesting telling them. They accepted me. They accepted my partner. You know, we do holidays, everything. It's just, it's an amazing experience. I was very fortunate, and I understand not everybody is, but I wanted to share that with you because regardless of what age, even to those of you who are in your 30s and 40s, it's never too late. But you got to do it when it's right for you. So, you know, there are times, you know, today we are a product of our environment, and my environment growing up at home was great, but you know, unfortunately, in school and all wasn't so good. So there are still scars, but it does get better. They impact who you are, but you know, you have to just be who you are, and so I think that's trying to remember what other facts. So that was 10 years ago. A few years later, I met my partner, who is the most incredible person. He loves me for who I am. He lets me be who I am. And the greatest thing that I had to learn was to accept love, because for so many years I couldn't. And it's still, you know, I still am working on that, is accepting love. And I think for a lot of us who come out later in life, that's the challenge, is feeling like we're deserving of that. But we are. Um, I am. There's no one better than me. I should say I do believe in God. My God is incredibly kind. We all are created in His image, so He created me. He made me who I am. And I think there was a reason that I had stayed in the closet for so long. I'm hoping not everybody has to. So that's my story. Um, Hope to hear more from others. Anyway, that's it.